for everybody who's on. It looks like we got a couple of people still joining, so we'll give them just a second or two. Okay, well, we can go ahead and get started. And let me just start by saying thank you for joining us for this information session on the DC concentration program at LBJ. I'm Bill Shute, the Executive Director of the Washington Center.
And I'm Robin Boone. I'm the Associate Director here at the LBJ Washington Center.
And Laura.
I'm Laura Roach. I'm based in Austin, so one of our academic advisors here in the Austin office.
Well, we'd like to keep this as informal as possible. We'll tell you a bit about the program. You may already know some of this information, but at any time you have a question or something we say isn't clear, please just pipe up and ask. We'd love this to be more conversational than just you sitting there listening to us prattle on. But we're very excited about this program, and we think you would be as well. If you don't know much about it, give you a brief background, and then turn it over to Robin to give you a few more details on the academic aspects of it. This is a one-of-a-kind, unique program. No other top 10 public affairs school offers a completely immersive DC experience like the DC concentration. It's open to any LBJ degree, being the MPath or the Masters of Global Policy Studies. But what's different about it is while you spend your first year in Austin, just as every other LBJ student does, getting the core material down, at the completion of that second semester, you immediately transition to Washington, and you spend the summer and the fall taking classes, finishing out your degree so you can graduate in December. But the cornerstone of it is the policy apprenticeship. This is basically a full-time job in a policy-related field that you care about. And the way that process works is, from day one you get into the program, Robin and I work with you and chat with you regularly to make sure we have a good understanding of your policy interest and the type of work you'd like to do when you come to Washington. And then we turn you loose to go find organizations or entities that seem appealing to you. We keep that conversation going amongst the three of us so that when you identify an organization, we might be able to introduce you to an alum who works there or previously worked there, or maybe we have a professional contact from our other experiences of someone who has been there. And then we help you through that process. You apply for the apprenticeship, you get an interview, you secure the position, you come to Washington, jump right into it. At the same time, you're here in town, you're doing coursework 2 nights a week in our center, very conveniently located. You can see the facade in behind Robin right there. It's a beautiful old building that's very conducive to just about every organization in town. In fact, it's just a block or two from Metro Center, which is the hub of the Public Transportation Center in Washington. Our courses in DC are taught by practitioners, people who've been in their field. For instance, we have one course on how Congress works that is taught by an expert at Congressional Research Service, someone we describe as the woman who teaches Congress how Congress works. And as I said at the outset, you wrap all this up by December. So it's basically a 15-month program that gives you a leg up to the job market, gets you ahead of the rest of your cohort, even those who are LBJ students in Austin. I'm going to leave it there and turn it over to Robin to go into a bit more detail about the academic side of this, and then we'd love to take any questions you have.
Yeah, thank you. So first off, your first year in Austin, you will be doing the core coursework, the same as if you were in the traditional 2-year program for either MPath or MGPS students, Masters of Public Affairs, Masters of Global Policy Study. The core coursework includes methodology, economics, financial management for MPAF and international systems for MGPS, as well as communications and writing courses, and you also get to do electives. When you're in Austin, you're a full LBJ University of Texas student, so you have access to everything that the traditional two-year students would have. There's different student groups, there's research centers you could apply to be a research assistant with, you could work with the professors. There's a student publication you could write with. We've had even chief editors-in-chief of the Baines report. So you have the whole school and all the activities and excitement of Austin while you're there. But also while you're there, you're preparing, as Bill said, to come to DC. Once you are in DC, you get your biggest elective of all, the policy apprenticeship. So you do have fewer electives while you're in Austin, but you have this wonderful full 6-month immersive, nearly full-time position in your policy area interest. As Bill said, it's very much driven by you as a student and your interests. We help you think about the approach, we help you with contacts, but it's really about what you want. So it is the biggest elective, as we always say. In addition, you have 2 nights a week of courses. You have courses on how the Congress works, how the federal budget is created and implemented, public management, which is focused on the federal government a bit, but it's really, you could take it in any public sphere and even private, great management tools on it. And then kind of how everyone else who's not part of the government works to make federal policy happen in DC. So, lobbyists, advocacy organizations, nonprofits, think tanks, and that is actually taught by Bill. So I could let him speak about it a little bit more, but those are the basics. And those happen, as I said, in the evening, 2 nights a week, usually Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday. And then on Fridays, we have an exemplars and policymaking course. That's a 1-credit course. It's a speaker series where we bring in alumni and other folks in the federal policy arena to talk about their specific policy area, talk about their career, how they got there. So it's a little bit of policy as well as a little bit of career development, and just gets you acquainted with even more aspects of the DC federal policy making world. So those are the basics. There's a little bit more on our policy apprenticeship. I think we've kind of gone over that, but we're happy to answer any other questions you might have on it. Here are some of the organizations. As we said, policy apprenticeships, really student driven. So there's folks who want to be up on the Hill in Congress, in the executive branch. At the White House, we've had folks. Other ones want to be in the private sector, whether it's think tank doing research, advocacy, nonprofits, advocacy, private for-profit firms, consulting firms, kind of everywhere. We've had them both for the policy apprenticeships and for post-graduation. And our alumni network. We have an amazing alumni network. This program would not survive without it. They're the backbone of helping you find policy apprenticeships, helping you network. We help connect you with them. We host some events and networking opportunities so that you could connect with them. And then at the end, you become one and you give back. Our DC concentration alumni, as well as traditional 2-year alumni, are always happy to talk about their experience and help you. And then Bill, do you want to talk about some of the outside events?
Outside of the academic portion of the Washington Center, we also are a policy hub. We work with the faculty in Austin to have policy discussions at the center in DC. We just finished a 4-part book talk series with faculty who we're swinging through Washington, a fascinating series about their look at certain aspects of our history and how it applies to the challenges that we face right now in our country. And then we have a number of social events, alumni outreach. We have a orientation, welcome to DC reception on the rooftop of the building for when our students come to Washington in the summer. And election season's always fun because we do things like debate watch parties and get into the policy discussions that are being talked about out on the campaign trail. This is something that is so much fun to do in town because we get to meet alumni who don't necessarily participate otherwise. We get to meet people who are just interested in the topics, and all of that builds a bigger net, a bigger network to help incoming DC concentration students get their policy apprenticeship and then post-graduation as well. So here's our contact information. Please feel free to take advantage of it. Reach out to us. Any questions or anything that you'd like to hear more about in the DC concentration, we'd be more than happy to chat with you. And right now, we'd love to have some questions. If you have anything that we didn't discuss that's on your mind, or a question that could clarify some of the things we did say, please feel free to pipe up.
Well, regrettably, my Zoom didn't come up right away because I haven't been on it in a while, thankfully, which was kind of
Good for you.
I know. I'm finishing up my third year of law school, thinking about coming down there and doing this DC concentration. My question is, what is you might have covered in the beginning, and I apologize if you've been asked, but what is the percentage rate for placement inside of the federal government after completion of the DC concentration?
You know, we've had very good success at job placements. In fact, I can't think of one out of the many cohorts we've had in the program who didn't get a job within a number of months afterwards. I will say not everyone goes into the federal government after coming through this program, and not everyone stays in Washington. We've had a number of alumni of the program who have gone to Capitol Hill and worked and then moved on to do something else. We've had some that go straight into corporate public affairs. We've had one that's gone international, working with an NGO. We think that while there's no expectation that you would stay in Washington, that incentive that you discovered when you applied, the motivation to apply for the program at the front, and then the tools that you gain, the experiences that you gain in the program could serve you well anywhere across the public affairs sphere, and have that inherent knowledge, on the ground experience with how the federal policy arena works can be so helpful in many career paths.
Yeah, and I would just add that, well, I don't have the exact stats for the students as they're graduating. If they are interested in going into the federal government, we have been able to get nearly all of them, not all of them, it's not 100%, but nearly all of them who have been interested in getting into the federal government, including with some PMF, some presidential management fellows, that they were awarded that and got into federal service via that program.
I'm currently waiting on a PMF to come back right now. They do those awards in February, so good luck to everybody who's out there trying to struggle through that right now. But yeah, I did 17 years as an infantry officer in the Army, so I'm really wanting to finish that piece off. So it's good to know that that's happening. The other question that's very specific to me, and I'm sorry I'm boring the rest of y'all, getting the bar exam done before I head out, is that preferred?
Oh, I don't know about preference. I haven't taken the bar myself a few decades back. I know the time commitment that it is. It is a time sink.
10.5 weeks, yeah. It sucks.
Yeah. It would be tough to work through that during your first semester first year in particular, I would say, because that is an adjustment. That's a time of adjustment for just about every LBJ student. Most of them, like yourselves, have been out in the workforce for a while. They're coming back as a career pivot or a second career path. And it takes a little while to get back in the rhythm of being a grad student. Plus, that's the concentration of all of the core quantitative courses. So that takes up a lot of time as well. If you were to take the bar this summer, if that would be an option, then yeah, I would recommend that. And then you're ready to step forward. And, between you and me, after going through 3 years of law school and taking the bar, you're going to love LBJ. You're going to love that experience.
Very different. Right. And I see that Matilda had a question about are apprenticeships generally paid or unpaid? That is definitely, it's a wide range. I would say it kind of depends on what type of policy apprenticeship you would like. So in general, the Hill does not pay. They say they are starting to pay, but really it's very rare to get a paid position on the Hill.
Yeah.
Executive branch, if you're able to go through the Pathways program, they do tend to be paid. We've also been successful at getting volunteer positions, which would be unpaid. The private sector, nonprofits are hit and miss 50-50, I would say, on whether or not they paid. Consulting firms, lobbying shops, advocacy places tend to pay. Those are all very generalizations, but over the years, they seem to hold true. If you receive a position that is unpaid or underpaid, there are fellowships available at the LBJ school that you could apply to once you are here, that help out in giving you a bit of a stipend, so that you can get some payment during your policy apprenticeship. All right, and Juliet, you have a question?
Hi there, thank you for your answer today. I had a two-part question. So the first is what students usually do in the transition between the spring and summer semester, particularly moving to Austin and DC. And then the second part is someone looking at the MGPS program. What are some of the international venues that we might be able to explore in coursework or the internship placement while we're in DC?
Yeah, you want to handle the transition question?
In general, the previous years, we've had a pretty short transition between the end of the spring semester and the beginning of the summer semester. Students tended to have about 2 to 3 weeks between ending the finals and moving to DC. So that transition was, packing up, moving here. The university has changed their academic calendar this year. So this will be the first year where there's a full month, a little over a month, depending on when your last final is, between ending the courses in Austin and needing to be in DC. The summer semester starts usually the first Thursday of June. So you basically start right at the very beginning of June. So it's really, we suggest you take a moment to, breathe, relax, take that time for yourself, whatever you need to kind of decompress from finishing off your first year of grad school and getting ready to move to DC or back to DC, I know in your case. So I think, spending some time on yourself, getting to DC a little bit, as early as you can before starting. That's also a good recommendation tip for when you get to Austin and start just having a lay of the land, knowing where, how to get from your apartment to the grocery store to, just knowing your routine a little bit before jumping into classes. And then once you're in DC, classes and working. So it's really, there's nothing prescribed during that time, but definitely giving yourself a little time to yourself, I would definitely recommend.
And then as far as the host entity for the apprenticeship that would fit a GPS interest, the world is your oyster. I mean, that's one thing I would like to clarify a little bit overall in all policy apprenticeships. We don't have seats set aside at particular organizations because your interests vary from cohort to cohort, right? However, we've had a number of students who have gotten PAs at great organizations with either a global focus or the impact of global policies, like the Wilson Center, the Atlantic Council, Bread for the World. Gosh, what's the cocoa one in every
World
country?
Cocoa
Oh, World
Foundation.
Cocoa Foundation, right? And Foreign Affairs Committee in the House. That's probably half of the GPS related policy apprenticeships. Those are the ones that come off the top of my head.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I have a few of what I hope are quick questions, kind of logistical. Wondering, what is the timeline for application? Is it before admittance, or at some point during that first year in Texas, can you apply to the concentration?
So we have, the application season is open right now, and we'll continue through the spring, basically. There's always a quick turnaround on review and offer letters. But we have had several instances where someone has opted into the traditional 2-year program, and then once they've gotten Austin, they've thought it through again and they've switched into the program. Those students have been very successful along the way. We had one do it as late as the spring semester 2 years ago. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the ideal is to, think about it, think about your career, where you want to go, and apply during the application season, because if you're able to start the DC concentration from the beginning, it's just a little less stressful, a little less having to make sure that everything fits into place, because you have to get all your core coursework done before coming to DC. But if you are on the right track with all your courses, you can switch into it. But if you have any interest in it, I definitely recommend just really thinking about it and exploring it. If you want to have, private conversations with us to kind of think through where it is that you're interested in going with your career and post-graduation and your time in school, we're happy to do that to kind of help you figure out where you want to go with it.
Some hopefully a couple other quick ones for you. Just wondering if the cost of the program is the same as a normal 2 years, 4 semesters in Texas.
There is an additional DC departmental tuition for your 2 semesters while you're in DC. The other reason for applying as early as you can, and specifically for the DC concentration, is when you submit your application, you are also reviewed for fellowships. And LBJ overall in the DC concentration has historically had, a good percentage of fellowships to help offset those additional fees for it. They are departmental tuition. So for those of you who are veterans and using veterans benefits, you can use veteran benefits for those as well.
Just one more, if you don't mind. Just in terms of some of the, supportive things that are offered at UT, I'm thinking about graduate housing, and then like GRA, teaching assistant positions. Is any of that available in DC, or even support finding housing?
Not in DC. So there is no graduate student housing because everyone kind of has a different situation when they come. We do have informal help, mainly with helping to connect you with recent alums who've gone through the search, kind of could help you, might have rooms available or might be leaving their apartment and have a sublet available. So we do make those connections to help you, but there is no set housing.
As far as the GRA, this is maybe a statement and a question for Bill and Robin. I know one thing to come out of, kind of the llast few years is I've definitely seen some students who have had an opportunity while they're in Austin, and they've been able to transition that opportunity depending on what their apprenticeship looks like and their time and availability. But there have been some students that have had, like a research experience or something that they were able to continue with some like tuition reduction benefits that come out of GRA ships and that kind of thing. So I just want to make clear you're not barred from participating in something like that once you make that transition from Austin to DC.
And in fact, with the onset of the pandemic, the school changed a lot of its processes for student assistants, GRAs, TAs, all that. And we had a student in that first pandemic cohort who basically, had lost his policy apprenticeship opportunity because the organization was just shutting down. And he ended up being a student assistant for the summer and then got a job in the fall. We had one just the opposite situation this past cohort where one of the students was able to get a summer apprenticeship, and then trying to transition to something new in the fall, he actually discovered a faculty member at UT that he had previously worked with, and that faculty member needed a GRA, so he became his assistant from DC. And it worked out very well because it was right in his policy alley. It really helped him kind of focus more interest in that policy area than he was getting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the other question in the chat, TA opportunities while in Austin. Yes, there are TA opportunities. As a general rule, they tend to be outside of the LBJ in your first year, just because LBJ professors often, again, this is a generalization, but pretty true, I think, across the board, want to have second years as their TAs, just somebody who's already gone through the course. But UT is a very large campus, and there's always professors across campus looking for graduate students from all departments to be a TA. And we've had a lot of students TA across campus, depending on what your undergraduate major or your skill set is.
Yeah, in fact, even year before last, when a lot of UT undergrads were still virtual courses, we had one of our students up here in DC who, in addition to doing the policy apprenticeship, was continuing to be a TA back in Austin remotely. So he was, I don't know where he found the extra 25th hour of the day, but he managed it just fine. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I lost the names.
Hi.
Daniel.
Hi, good evening. My name is Daniel Shates. I live here in Austin and work for the Region 13 Education Service Center. This has all been very informative. Thank you all for sharing with me. I'm interested, obviously, in education policy and state and federal level, and kind of looking at all the different tracks that you can plug into with the LBJ school. I kind of gravitated towards this one for a lot of the reasons that you've stated already in getting that DC experience. But what can you tell me about folks who pursue, education policy tracks, and what opportunities there might be for things like fellowship in that policy making?
We've had a number of our students in the education field, and it's across a number of the different iterations of what education policy means here in Washington. Education Trust, for example, has been home to a couple of our students because they have really focused on a mixture of policy development and advocacy, and our students wanted to get more engaged on the front end of policy like that as well.
Yeah, and post-graduation, we've had folks stay in DC, work for education think tanks, research organizations, NEA, and we also have had folks go back to Texas and work at foundations and nonprofits, and even the Austin School District.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had it kind of in both federal level and state level at various different organizations, both public and private. So education, definitely there's a strong alumni network working in that field.
Thank you for that. And as far as locally, what you were saying about tuition assistance, things like that, and some of the other questions, are there fellowships associated specifically with education that I might look into, or is that something that upon application I might filter into?
I can't think of any specific to education at LBJ. The LBJ website does list the various fellowships. So basically for fellowships, when you apply, you get evaluated for merit-based and need-based fellowships from the school that are awarded upon admissions. And then there are also a few fellowships for continuing students that you could apply to once you are in Austin and after your first semester usually. And then there are the policy apprenticeship fellowships that you apply to when you secure a position, if it's unpaid or underpaid. So there are fellowships along the way. Some of them are specific to different policy areas or regions. So there will be some that you would not be eligible for, and then others are just open to any LBJ student. So there are various buckets. I can't think of any in education though. Laura, can you think of any?
No, I was just trying to pull up. We have some different lists, and if you ever wanted to like get in touch, I'll throw our email, just sort of our general team email in the chat as well. We have some students that have gone through like the Department of Education, just sort of grant kind of that route, or depending on if you have, we have a lot of students that take advantage of like if you're going to participate in the MGPS side specifically, often that have to do maybe with your experience with a foreign language or wanting to learn a foreign language. So that's just one example of the kinds of fellowships that we can help you find because students have used them, but nothing is coming to mind so far of a student that that I know of a specific fellowship, and just because of your interest in education. But there are definitely, it takes some searching, but that's why our careers office, as well as our fellowships office, is where we work to do that work, or at least help you along that journey. So there's resources in-house that whether you're a part of the DC program or the 2-year Austin program, there's a team of us here to support you.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, Bill has put our email addresses and Laura put hers in the chat. So please do feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or want to have an individual conversation about your situation or your interests. We're happy to arrange for that.
Yeah, agreed, seconded. And Jeffrey, I didn't get the chance to tell you this earlier, but we had a former infantryman go through the program 2 years ago, and he's now a PMF working at the State Department. So
oddly enough, we're not that large in number, so there's always a chance I know him.
you may
Jump on planes for
very
a living. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope it was informative. We hope we motivated you to apply to the program. We can't speak highly enough about it. It's a wonderful experience, and the people, I just am impressed every year at the people that come through this program.
Thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you.